Yes, I was born in Erie. May 7th, 1934. I was out of high school, working, and they opened up a track out in Harbor Creek called Highmeyer Road. Somebody come in, and I went out there to watch a race. And then these guys says, geez, that looks like fun. So that must have been about 56, 57. So I think it was the next year, I said, I'm going to get into that. And I was out browsing around, and I found somebody had but was it, I think, late July or early August of that year, somebody had this car for sale for $20, a race car. It had number 12 on the side. It was a two-door 41 Ford Coupe. So I said, I'm going to try that. So I took it out to Kuhl Road. Got up the Kuhl Road, and got there, and the first thing they did, they put me on the pole because I was a new guy. First turn, everybody pushed me all over the place and took me out of them. So I kind of hung in with that car for 4 or 5 weeks. So at the end of the season, I said, you know, I kind of like that. I'm going to go out and see if I can find a better car and learn what I can and build a car. Now that car, for example, they had the rear end chained down, put the chain so when it wouldn't bounce, and the 12 was on it. And how I got the J12, believe it or not, when I built the new car, I says, well, at that car, I didn't want to have the number 12. My wife's name was Julia. I had a son, Jeffrey, and a daughter, Jill. So I just put the J in front of it. So then when I built the new car, I said, well, I'm going to keep J12 and see if I can, you know, make it a winning car. Well, I had a fairly decent career because I did good. Got a lot of good competition back then. It was Tom Dill. And,
so where was your first race? Was at
Cool Road Speedway? Yes.
Where was that located?
It was up, up off of Cool Road. You go up off of Cool Road. It was on, I think it was called Greenbrier Road, right up here off of Rubber 90 is it, and that was the closest one. Now, I only ran there maybe 5 or 6 times that year and didn't go anywhere else. And then we through the winter we bought a car off a guy. There was a guy by the name of, I think, Tiny something. He had a coupe. He wanted to get out in the race. And he was a big guy, and I think I bought the car for like $50 or something like that. And I learned, and it was all set up pretty good. I learned then how to set cars up. Like they used to double shock the front ends, and they and of course you got to remember, them old Fords back then, they had the solid axle in the front, and you know, we used to take and double shock the right front, and single shock the left thing to keep it from, you know, bouncing around, because the trick was that back in them days, how could you didn't have all these bars to transfer your weight over, stuff like that. So I learned, and I built that one car there, the picture that you're looking at there, I built myself, bought that car and did the welded roll bars and everything else, and built it all up, picked up a couple of sponsors, and
what kind of car was it?
That was a 42 Ford Coupe. Okay. I bought it out it was sitting on the side of a street somewhere down around Union City. It's down the way, sitting in a gas station in the corner, no motor, no nothing, just the body. And I walked in, and the guy said, yeah, you can have it for $25. Actually, the body was pretty good shape, because when I cut it all up and did the things on it, a lot of people said, oh, you ruined a good body. So my brother had a 50 Ford, and I talked him into buying an Oldsmobile, and I took his 50 Mercury, I took his 50 Mercury first one, and I took the engine out of it, and I put it in the car. And went out and raced, and had a pretty good season. Then from that time on, I got smart. I took my engine, I had it built in Buffalo. We were only allowed to do certain things. I had it bored 60,000, which was all we could do. I had an Escaderian cam put in it, and they said all you could have. I told the guys, so the rules out there was you couldn't have more than a 500 lift on your valves, because it was a flat head. So this guy says, well, I'm going to put you in what they call a deaeration cam. I said, what's that? He said the lobe on the top is wider. It doesn't lift more than 500, but it holds it open longer, so you get more horsepower on it. And that way they couldn't check that to find it was illegal. So I put that, and then, you know, went down underneath, and sometimes some of the guys chopped their flywheel a little bit to make it lighter like that. And I went out there, and I think in my third year, I won a few races. And then I think I had 4 cars before, yeah. There was the first one that I bought off the guy, then the second one I built, then it was 2 more I built. I built this one and this one. See, this is a different car. This is a 2-door, this is a 2-door, and this is coupe. And this car was pink and black. And if anybody wants to know why I got pink, I worked in the shop. I was a painter in the shop, and I asked him if I could have some paint to paint my car, and he says, okay. We built gas pumps down at Smith Erie meter system, and the red was Atlantic red, was 57 Atlantic red, and somebody white. And they said, well, we had some old paint take, so I mixed the white and the red together, and it come out pink. And I said, well, but tell you what, I won more races with that car than any car, so because the pink car, everybody respected the pink. Nobody ever asked me about the color.
Where did you race during this time period? We know you raced your first year at Kuhl Road. Then what other tracks did you race at?
Then I had a buddy that I met at work, and he says, he says, Erie Stadium is starting to race cars up there. And of course, we got guys up there. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It was Joe Sharkey, kind of was a big instigator, got him in. What happened was the Erie Stadium up at the school on Erie, they started bringing the late models in from Jamestown. And for some reason, after a couple of weeks, they didn't want to run there anymore because it was so small and so tight. And so a guy by the name of Joe Mobilia funded this project. And Joe Sharkey was racing what we called the jalopy type of car. And he said, well, I got 25 or 30 guys that are racing around that will race in the stadium. So my buddy talked me into getting in the stadium. That was a nice place. And then I raced Kuhl Road, and then I got down to Coon Road on a Sunday, and then throughout, before I finished racing, I don't know who the guy was, somebody opened up a track out on Iroquois Avenue, and they called it the Thunderbowl. So it was Wednesday. So I raced Friday night in the stadium, Saturday night at Kuhl Road, Wednesday nights at Thunderbowl, and then Sundays I'd go to the Coon Road, and one day I raced a place called Sulphur Springs. I don't even remember where that was at.
Fiddler Lake.
Okay. And then Erie Speedway opened up, and they brought us in for some times. And then, of course, they got the late models in there. But every once in a while, they'd run a special with us guys who'd run there. And I raced for, I don't know how many years, but I'll tell you a story about Kuhl Road. You win a lot of races. Well, I can't remember. I said, but I must have won a few, because I'll tell you, Kuhl Road had passed a rule, that if you won a feature race, somebody put up $50 and protest your car, and you would tear the car down. And I know the one year, they tore my car down 6 times. So obviously I must have won 6 features in that year. I remember that. And the guy who was my pit guy, he said, well, we're not going to tear the car down the night of the race, because you ain't going to open up this car on a cold night and hit all the things. So he stepped with the car overnight and they tore it down in the morning. They checked the bore, they checked the stroke, they checked the cam, they checked to see if you had a little flywheel. And gear ratio, as long as you run a Ford part, you could run any gear ratio you want. I was running a 440, which come out of a milk truck, real low gear, because Kuhl Road was a small track. I didn't run any faster on the straightaway than anybody else, but when I got on 9 times out of 10, when I would pass somebody, I'd pass them coming out of the turn. I'd get them coming out of the turn. So, but I don't know I can't remember how many races I won, but they didn't give us trophies and stuff back then. They just give you a $50 bill for winning or something like that, And then they didn't have many people write up too much stuff back then. And that's like I didn't say. So I did pretty good at Kuhl Road. I can remember going down to Coon Road. I'm sure it was Coon Road. It was real dusty one day, and was running out there. And I'm running, and all of a sudden I see the flagman steps out onto the track, and he put out the red flag and the checkered flag. Stopped the race. I come back. He come over. He said, "I'm sorry to do it," but he said, "I threw the checkered flag about 2 laps ago because so and so won it." And I said, "Well, I didn't even see the flag. It was so dusty." and there was 3 or 4 guys behind me that were still running too. So I always remember that
And I'm
experience.
looking at a 1961 article that said feature race at Coon Road won by Jimmy Dunn, and that the first heat was won by Ray Sonnenberg of Erie.
Right.
Obviously, you won a race there and won.
Yeah. I used to win a lot. I used to win a lot of heats. Like I said, I run into some guys that now and then, and they all say to me, you were tougher than what you thought you were. I was one of these guys. I never bragged it up. Now my wife, she didn't go to the races. She wouldn't go, and so she didn't pass any news around. And every once in a while, I run into a old race driver from around town or somewhere, and they always say, "Oh, I remember you. You were kind of a tough driver out there." So, but like I said, that story about Kuhl Road, I remember that was in one season. That was in the first year they passed that rule. I know I tore my car down 6 times, so obviously I won 6 features at least.
So how does it work when they want to tear down your car, and if they don't, somebody's got to put up $50.
Yeah.
And to say you.
We want to tear you down to see if you're legal.
And what happens if they assume you are legal, and do they give you the $50?
Yes. Yes, put your car back together. They pull the heads off, check the stroke, check the bore, check the cam lift. Then they take a magnet and see if you're running an aluminum flywheel, which you weren't allowed to run. And they feel up in there to see if you had a chopped flywheel, which I had, but they didn't find it because what I did, I chopped it on the side where the clutch disc was. Just left enough on it, so when they felt that, they couldn't feel the thing. These little cheating things that you did. You weren't supposed to run electric fuel pump. So what we used to do in that day, the old flathead Ford had the fuel pump set on top of the manifold and pushed by a rod. What we used to do is take it out and put weld a nut or something to the top of the rod so you got more lift, so you got more gas pump. Your fuel pump probably wore out in 4 or 5 weeks, but back then you go to the junkyard and get another fuel pump, or you could buy a fuel pump for $1 to get a little more push out of it. Stuff like that, and things that you and gas tank. You had to have gas tank in the bag. So what I did, like a lot did, I took the gas tank out and I bought 2 5-gallon Army cans and I strapped them in the trunk in the back and put a T on them and for the feed the gas to it, and if you only needed it for a short race, only use 5 gallons of gas to keep weight, and that was legal, and it was safer than a gas tank anyway. Stuff like that. Your fuel line had to have has to been inside the car, running inside the car, and you had to put it inside of a hose, rubber hose for a safety feature. Well, that was okay. So you just run the fuel line on the inside of the car. But we used to only be able to run street tires because there was no such thing as a racing tire back then in that class. And I found a tool from J.C. Whitney, which was a automotive catalog. It was a cross-grooving tool. So I used to take, and we could take it. It looked like a D-shaped tool that you heated up, and you could cross-groove the treads to give you a different tread. What we used to do is on the 2 inches in from the outside tread, we used to put it on an angle, so when you went in a turn, you got more bite. And we used to get our tires. Back then, we still had tubes in the tires. So the cheap way there was Joe's Tire Shop in Erie down off of Prairie Street, and Johnny Adler worked down there, who was a racer, and they used to recap tires. Well, they get a recap tire, and they find them when we get a break in the sidewall. They couldn't sell them new, so they would sell us that tire for $1. Sell us a $25 blowout patch. We put the blowout patch on, so we had a new tire for $25. And then we cross-groove it like that. Of course, there was they weren't racing tires. Some of the little things, they all got in there. Johnny Adler used to save these tires for the race guy. Give him a couple bucks, buy a tire. And then we used to pass. I think I had the grooving tool. Me and another guy bought it, and we just passed it around to people, and you picked up your own idea to get a little better bite with the tire. Then down the road, as time went on, and I got into the late model. You had racing tires. You buy the compound you wanted for the track.
You raced at all these tracks, and essentially these were these stock jalopy cars.
Yeah.
I don't know the term. And then at some point you decide you'd try the late models. What caused you to do that?
Well, I was doing pretty good in other classes, and somebody said I wanted to move up a late model. And it was actually 69 when it worked in because what's his name? I'm trying to think of his name, but from Stateline was running at Erie Speedway, and he was running a 69 or 68 Chevy Chevelle. That's with a 396 in it. And he was doing real good. And Ed Faulkner was running in the jockey, so he bought that car, and he had bought this 68 body off the frame and everything else. And I heard he had, and he said, "You give me $75, you can have everything." He gave me the car, the frame, the engine, the transmission. It was all out of there. So I took it. My buddy said, "Come on, put it in my garage." So we welded the roll bars in. We beefed up the frame where we were supposed to. We put the body all on, put the shocks in, put the transmission in, put the rear end in, and that's how I got in the late model. And I didn't do too good in late model. I didn't win any races, but I mean, I finished sometimes in the top 10. I got about 2 years into it. At that time, I had already raced about 15, 16 years in the other class. And all these guys I had that were working with me, they just got to the point, they said, "Yeah, we're getting a little bit tired of doing this and that." And not only that, right about that time of the year, all of a sudden some of these late model cars were coming in these built chassis and stuff like that, and it kind of pushed out what we called the stock car today, which now they're called street stocks. But back then they were late models at that time. And I just got to the point where I just didn't have the finances to compete. And so my wife's sitting home, and I was doing all this racing, this and that, and the kids hadn't. So I thought, well, it's time to kind of get out of it. So the following year, my wife said, "Well, what are you going to do in the summer?" I said, "I don't know." She always talked about, when you was a kid, you was down in the water all the time, putting around in a rowboat and stuff. She said, "Would you like to get into boating?" So I went down and bought myself a power boat. And from that time on, I power boated through the summer, and went up Erie Speedway probably for the next 5 or 6, 7 years. Never missed a race up there on a Sunday night. Was there every night, down in the pits with Dick Litz, hanging around in the pits and stuff like that. And then there was a guy, I can't remember what his name was. They were running what they called the Sportsman. They were kind of like these cars in there. There was a late model and the Sportsman. And he had a Chevy. He had a Jimmy engine in it, and his son was running. It wasn't too good. And I was wondering, I said, "Would you take my car and run it in the feature race for me to race? See what I hadn't raced for a couple of years." So he said his son wasn't doing it. I got in the car and I finished 4th in the feature. He says, "By God," he says, "my car's never even finished the race." So he said, "Well, how would you like to drive for me next year?" I said, "What are we going to do?" He said, "I want to build a Sprinter." I said, he said, "We'll go sprint car racing." I said, "Oh, okay. I'll get back into it. The heck with the boats. I'll go back to sprint car racing." Through the winter months, he got a heart attack, ended up down the hospital. So I went down to see him, and he said, "Well, the sprint car is still going to go." He said, "The boys are still going to work on it." And he passed. He didn't get out of the hospital. The boys said they didn't want to go into racing, so they sold everything. So I just kind of walked away, and that was ended my racing career, and except for watching them. But I had good times. I never really I rolled a car one time or had a rollover. I never really had a real serious accident. I just ran into the wall a couple times, spun out a few times, stuff like that. Never really got hurt. May add to the story a little bit. My dad, he used to go up the Kuhl Road all the time. My mother would never go. So anyway, my dad talked to my mother and go on, watch me race. So the first time she went to the race, I come in and turn number 3 at Kuhl Road, got bumped. And it was a rough track, hit a hole, laid it right over on its roof. Everybody said my mother was standing up in the stand screaming, "Oh, my son, my son, my son." She never went back to a race again. And then I started racing out at the Thunderbowl on Wednesday nights out there on Iroquois. And that wasn't a very good track for me. I didn't do good. Well, anyhow, make a story short there, I had a lot of my pit buddies, their wives would go, and they finally talked to my wife. They said, "Well, why don't you go out there and see watch him race. He does pretty good. He's not, he ain't winning a lot of races, but he's doing good. So my wife went out. I spun the thing out. I got hit by about 5 or 6 times, about 5 or 6 different cars. They kind of pushed me all the way down the end of the straightaway. Of course, we had all the beefing on the side, didn't do much damage. My wife says, "That's it. I ain't never going again." She said, the girl said, "Well, don't worry about him. He's usually better than that. This is a bad day for him. He's really a good driver." And she's, "No, I ain't going anymore." So my wife just let me do my thing. She stayed home with the kids and just let me do my thing.
So the night your mother shows up, you roll over. And the night your wife shows up, you spin out and get hit by several cars. So it's probably good they didn't show up.
but even in the roll-off, we just flipped the car back up. Took my hand, popped the roof out, checked the oil to make sure the oil was up there. I had to add a quart of oil, fired it back up. Yeah, it smoked a little bit because the oil that drained into the engine. Went out on the track, and I think I finished about 5th or 6th in the feature after I laid it on its roof.
In all your 15 years of driving the Sportsmans, who were some of the drivers you remember who were pretty good? Who
well, of course, Tom Dill, Charlie Force, Bob Doverspike, Mike Karmasharsky, Dickie Linder. Let me think. I can't think right now. But there was a bunch of them. Guy by the name of Long. In fact, these are the ones in the story there. And there's a guy by the name of Boyd. I think he's the same Boyd that's going around putting all these flags on all these bridges in Erie during the Memorial Day. He looks like the same guy because he was a small guy. Tom Dill. In fact, I raced Tom Dill out of Kuhl Road. We was on the pole together, and we went into turn number 1, and for some reason, I seen him flip his car over. He's alongside me, he's on the outside. He flipped the car right over, come back up on his 4 wheels. I looked to my right, and he was still right there alongside me. I think he lost about 2 inches on me. So I don't remember finish what we did in the race, but he just kept his foot right on the thing, just kind of boom, 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 and away he went. And Kuhl Road was a very, very rough track, very rough, bumpy, very bumpy.
What was the reputation of Tom Dill as a driver? He was good, but
oh yeah,
what kind of was he a rough driver? Was he
no good driver?
Good driver.
Good driver. In fact, he did go down south to race a little bit with Joe Mobilia.
Mm-hmm. Give me a Joe Mobilia story. Joe was a character.
Yeah, of course. He had the crippled hands. Great guy, but he had Tom Dill and Richie Barnell running for him. And they were gold cards. They were called the Gold Dust Kids. 51 and 52. They were the elite at the time. In the stadium, they were the kings. They came out to Kuhl Road now and then. So me to run side by side with Tom Dill was a good thing to do. Then Tom, after a while, he kind of moved up. I don't know whatever happened to Rich Barnell. Because the Barnell that owns the Barnell shop in Erie now, he's a cousin to Richie. He ran sprinters for a good many years. So I say, was it Johnny Adler? He helped me a lot. Johnny helped me a lot. Dick Perry. I used to pit against him. Dick Perry. He was another one out there at Kuhl Road. There was the Chamber boys. I understand somewhere along the line, I heard that the Chamber boys, their wives or mothers or something, has filmed, I guess, lots and lots of films from Cool Road Speedway somewhere. It's supposed to be in this town somewhere. The last I heard that somehow they had put them on CD somewhere. I would like to find out because I would like to see some of that.
What was their name?
Their name was Chambers.
Chambers.
It was Porky. I remember one was called Porky. I think the other guy's name was, they were 2 brothers. And everybody called them the Chamber twins. And
they were in Erie here?
They were in Erie at that time. They ran a Cool Road. All I can remember, they ran a car, kind of a rose-colored car. I can't remember the numbers now. But they were kind of they were one of these guys that if you pass them on the outside, they try to run you into the fence. So when you come up to him, you learn to pass them on the inside. Out of the track, they're the 2 nicest guys you ever met. But when they got into a car, they had like a split personality. They were like a completely different mode from there. They were, everybody called them kind of dirty drivers. But there was a lot of laying on, slamming and banging in that day. A lot of it wasn't delivered. The cars didn't handle like they do today. We used to put a big tire, the biggest tire money could buy on the right front, and the smallest one on the left front to transfer the weight to the thing. Double shock the right side of the car and stuff like that to try to make it handle better. No power steering. So what we used to do to help the steering, we used to take the pitman arm, which was the arm under the steering column, take that off, cut it, run a piece of steel bar in and lengthen it, and then curve it so you had more leverage out there. And then because the track was so rough with the wheels bouncing around, your drag link was when the cross was in front of this, used to bend, so we used to take angle iron and weld that on there to reinforce it and stuff like that. So if you had a car that started out weighing probably, by the time you stripped it down, 2,500 pounds. By the time you put the pipes and the bars and all the rails there around the front and the grill in the front, you had a big welded grill in the front to protect it from banging around. Your car probably weighed 5,000 pounds. So, And then Dick Litz said to me one day, he said, if we only knew what we knew today, he said, we'd have built a lighter car. He said, we wouldn't have to even modify it because we'd have probably overpowered everybody because horsepower for weight ratio was better. But they'd lay on people, as you can see here in some of these pictures, these pipes here are bent where people would, you hit you, and and I can say when you come up and you run in the back of somebody, well, they usually had a big piece of channel iron on the back bumper, and you had this big spoke grill in the front, and you're made out of angle iron and channel iron, so you just get up and sometimes you just push people around.
What was your highlight? If you sit back and you say, Greg, Randy, the race or two that might have been the most, one you remember the most, what would that might be?
I think it was the first feature race I won at Kuhl Road. And I remember that because I went into it and I spun out. And when you spun out back then, they didn't throw the caution flag like they do now. Usually they let the car set. I got the car running. I come around, I caught up to somebody, and anyhow, I kept racing, and all I can remember, I ended the race, and when I got down in my car, the flagman came over and says, "You won that race, Ray." I said, "No, I didn't." He said, "Yes, you did." And they called me upstairs into the public booth because they said I spun out, come all the way back, lapped all the people that passed me, and won the race, and I never even realized I'd run it. That was the first race I ever won. The first feature race at Kuhl Road. That was when I thought, well, maybe I'd get a little more settled down and get to find out more what way to really build a car, to get the car to handle a little bit, little tricks you do this and that. But I just had a good time. I made a lot of friends. I had a good time. It was tough because, we used to tow them with the tow bar. It was tough towing them around. And then the one year, I think this was one here, let me see. Yeah, Carter's Plaza Service. That was, this was the coupe. There was a guy on the corner of 12th and 12th and Pittsburgh on the northwest corner in the Larco station. This guy I met that worked to help me, he worked there part-time. He sponsored me. He gave me all my gas and oil, and he had a wrecker. He let me use the wrecker to tow the car in. So we used to pick the car up by the back end then because we had the locked rear end and used to break up that. I can remember the first day I towed in the season with the wrecker in the car, and all the says, "Here comes Sonnenberg, and look at the car, the equipment he's got. He's got a friggin' wrecker now to tow the car in. He's probably going to be unbeatable this year." I can remember him saying that. Well, I can't remember what I did there. I mean, I won. People tell me I won quite a few races. Won a lot of races. I don't ever remember. Maybe only once or twice did I finish last. It was either because I was involved in an accident or I went out. Now, this is a story. Another story that I just come back to me that somebody told me at Kuhl Road. Somebody said that for 8 weeks in a row, I was leading the race on the 24th lap. And when on 25th lap, I never made it because I kept breaking the front wheel off because pounding into the thing. kept breaking the front wheel off. And so what I did after that, I eliminated the brakes on the right front wheel. And what we used to do, we used to go to the junkyard and we used to buy Buick rims, and they were riveted in, so we drill the rivets out, and you take the center out and you'd reverse the wheel, put the center in, and then weld it, and that'd give you the offset wheel. So what I did, I welded a plate behind the front wheel because I kept pulling the wheels off. But I had to block off so I had only 3-wheel brakes, but nobody would say anything about it. That was another experience that helped me because I have to because they said, and then one time it happened, I was leading the Reds, I guess. So anyhow, somebody said it would have been about 8 weeks in a row. You should have won a race. It would have been probably like a record. I didn't finish any of them. Eight times in a row, but I didn't finish a race because of something happened. I broke a wheel or blew a tire or something like that. One time I was lapping a guy leading the race, and he took me out on the 23rd and 24th lap. And like my buddy said, well, you should have just sat back there because, and so then this one buddy of mine, he was pretty, he said, well, then he started getting signals out there. He'd come out and give me signals how many laps to go and where you're at and stuff like that. And we kind of started that. In fact, his wife, she went out and she bought coveralls for me and the 3 or 4 pit guides, put our number and our name on the back of our coveralls. Everybody else is out there in jeans and a t-shirt, because you're dusty. And so we had like uniforms. and everybody said, that's pretty neat. So I remember doing that. So kind of a greenhorn racer, but I was kind of, how do you want to say it? Kind of ahead of my time in a way. We first wanted to go, didn't have everybody dressed. I put the coveralls on, and after the race, I'd take them off. And the only place that had dirt was in my face. Everybody else had to go home in their car with their t-shirts and their clothes all full of dust and dirt and crap like that. And so these tracks were dusty then. In fact, sometimes before the feature, they'd go out and water them down. Well, first 4 or 5 laps, you didn't go nowhere. You're sliding all over the place. So, but it was fun. I liked what I did. I always kind of the only thing I regretted was that when that guy was going to build that Sprinter and I didn't get to go. I think if I would have, because I was just a regular working guy with 2 kids. I think maybe I'm overstepping my bounds, but I think if I could have had the money. I think in Sprinter, I think I could have really been a pretty good sprint track driver. I don't know if I'd have done it for a living, but I think I could have. One of these days, somebody talk to me like they did with the old Bonells and stuff like that. So that was the only thing. I just wished I could have financing to get some better equipment.
Tell me about this Chevelle here. You said you raced it in '69.
Yeah, that was
and 70. You said. Or just 69?
69 and 68.
Oh, 68. And where else did you race it besides Erie?
We raced Erie Stateline.
Okay.
And then there was a guy that tried to get racing into the Wattsburg Fairground, which he did. We went out there and raced. And what they did, they took us out there for the first couple of weeks, and they said, the track's not very good. We don't do it. They said, go out and put a show on, and we'll pay everybody $100, win or lose. They said, don't tear anybody up. Don't break your car. Just go out and put a show on. So we did, and we did it for quite a while. And then at the end of the season, what happened was a guy got killed out there. He was fixing the lights, and he got electrocuted on the lights.
Larry Parmenter.
Yes. So, and for this seemed that just kind of killed it out there. We only raced that one season, but I think that would have been a nice track. And I raced at Stateline. I raced this late models at Stateline.
So what was Stateline like? What was at the time it was owned by the Briggs,
yes.
Len Briggs,
yes.
and others?
They owned Erie's too.
Yep.
That's why we run that as a circuit.
So what did you think of Stateline Speedway?
It was a nice track. The only thing about Stateline Speedway, it had the wall on the outside of the turns and the wall on the inside of the turns. So, if you didn't get to the turn too good, you could kind of take a little damage to the car where, at least some of these tracks that had open infields, you could kind of dive to the infield. But I never did as good at Stateline as I did at Erie's.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I remember all those guys. In fact, Dick Litz and I were buddies. We worked together. And I can remember, I think it was the second or third time when I got in the late model. He had already moved in late models about 5 or 6 years before that, thanks to Joe Sharkey. Joe Sharkey, he had a garage in town, and him and Dick Litz were beer buddies, and Sharkey decided to build him a car. Well, as it went down throughout the year, Sharkey kept saying, I'm going to build a number 2 car, one for you, Ray. Well, he never got there. Well, anyhow, to get back to Dick Litz, we were buddies. And so I think it was the first or second race, and somehow I started side by side with Dick Litz and started down the turn, went in the first turn down the back stretch, come back up the home stretch, and for some reason he laid on to me and he pushed me in the state line. He pushed me up against the cement wall, and I have a picture. It was a picture in the yearbook, me laying this car right on its side on the thing. And I said to Dick, what did you do that for? And he said, I didn't mean to do it. And so I remember that instance at state line. It's the only place that I laid that car on its side, and I never had a wreck with my late model any other time besides that. Didn't do any damage to the car. Kind of pulled it back over, but you pull it in the pits and you got to check it out and stuff like that. So I really didn't get the race. But I raced one season in State Line and Erie, and then the second year, and then they also, like I say, we start racing the late models up at Wattsburg.
Who were some of the competitors that you raced against when you had a late model?
Johnny Ditch, Bobby Snars, Blackmer. I'm trying to think what his name was because he helped me the most. He was, what the heck was it? Ed something. He was racing a long time. And
Ed Kisco?
Eddie Kisco. No, it wasn't him. It was. So, and then of course there was Dick Gottfried, who was a friend of his running there then. Of course Dick Litz and Tom Dell back again. Richie Barnell. Now I don't remember him ever getting a late model for some reason. He was top one with the other. Let me think. I see these guys now and then. Johnny Ditch, he was the guy who used to park to him. I was having a little handling problem with the car. He was showing me how to set it up. What he told me to do, he said when you pulled into the pits, he'd come out with his floor jack. He'd take a extended socket, and he'd lay it on the floor jack, and he'd put the jack up under the pumpkin in the rear end, and he'd jack it up. And he jacked it up. If your right wheel fell to the ground, you were set up right. If your left wheel set to the ground, you had to do it. And for some reason, I could never get enough downforce on the right wheel. But every time I come in, he said, well, that's better. And I don't know what I did, but I finally analyzed it. I think it would have, because it seems like that was like the 5th or 6th race of the year when I started having a little problem. The first couple of weeks, I didn't really go out and I'd try to run with everybody, and the car handled good. And I bumped the wall, and I think when he got through figuring this all out, almost after the end of the season, I kind of think that when I hit the wall, I think I bent the frame a little bit. That when no matter how much I cranked on the track bar, I couldn't get that right wheel to only drop about 2 inches instead of 5 or 6. That was so. I've never really gotten to handle good. So the best I ever probably think I ever finished in this thing was maybe a 10th or 11th, something like that in the late model. Of course, there's some guys who've been running a long time. Sure. And then another story I can go back to that Kuhl Road. That's one guy said to me. He said, I know a speed shop up in Buffalo. He said, let's take your engine up there and have it rebuilt. He said, and have it balanced. Well, people today don't realize what a balanced engine is. I've talked to people. What a balanced engine is, your pistons, your pistons and your connecting rods all should weigh the same. So what he used to do is just take it to this guy, and he'd go to the lightest piston, and then he would cut off to get everything balanced up. and then he'd balance your crankshaft. Well, I was down there, and he showed me. He took the stock crankshaft that come from the factory, and he put it on this lathe, and he turned it up. About 4,000 RPM, that thing goes blah, 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 blah. He balanced that thing out. He could take up to 10,000 RPM. So he put me a balanced engine. I was the first guy to run a balanced engine at Kuhl Road. And I'll tell you this story. That was the pink car. Because I remember I started, I think it was the first day, and I started third off pole. And my buddy was standing there, and he said, when you went in the number one turn, he said, when you hit that gas, number one turn when the flag went down, he said, when you come out of that turn, you was running first because that balanced engine. And everybody said, what's Sonnenberg doing now? So I didn't tell him. So finally it come out. So then all of a sudden everybody started getting their balanced engines. Of course, today now, even your factory car, your everyday car is a balanced engine. But back in them days, they didn't do that. I tell people, they say, man, how old are you, 100 years old? And I said, no. And I said, but that's the way it was. So a balanced engine is just rev so much quicker, so much smoother. And when I built this late model, it had a 327 in it. And I blew it out in Erie. And there was George Hassel. He had B&M Speed Shop. So last year, so I took my 327 out. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll bore it. I'll stroke it. We'll put cams in it. We'll do this. We'll do all that. We'll build it up and put it back in and give me a week. So I went out to George Hassel to get the thing. Give me the bill for all the new pistons and this, $300 and some, right? I said, that's unbelievable. You can't buy a set of rings for that today. And then he was one of these guys. He says, I said, well, how much owe you? He said, don't worry about it. He says, pay me so much a week. He says, you're a new guy. You're a little underdog. Just give me a couple bucks a week until you get on your feet. George Hassel did that for a lot of us guys starting out. Yeah. Well, the poor guy, he didn't live too long. He died, but I always remembered him because he helped me a lot. He's the one that suggested what kind of a camshaft I should put in it and stuff like that. So that 327, man, it was fast. Then I had that little bit of a handle pump. And then, of course, at that time, that was just about the time when people were having tires. So I think it was Joe Fink, the tire guy that was in Cambridge Springs. He sold slicks, racing slicks, for like $20. We'd go out there and buy our racing slicks, and we'd groove them. And that's the first time I used to put that on. And I remember the first time I took my car out, and come out number one time, I got in, and this one guy comes, I can't remember who it was, he said, man, Ray, you got the thing set up pretty good. He said, that thing was flying out there in warm-up lap. But there was a difference in the tires. And of course, as time went on, now today, you got different compounds or different track surfaces. And I think my own opinion is, I've been going to races this year and seeing my son race and everything. I think they took the fun out of it when they went to the special equipment because ingenuity worked. And just like I said, 90% of the guys at Kuhl Road were running what they called a 437 gear. I was running a 440. It was really low gear, but that was a small track. And they said, where'd you get it? The only place that had the milk truck. Go to the junkyard, take it out of the milk truck. You know, you didn't have to go buy gear. Now today, even like my son today, everybody has to run the same car, same carburetor, the same tire, and so I really, I've been to a couple races this last year, but to me, I think when they took the, I mean, it really wasn't cheating to a point because, like I said, even like the camshaft, you weren't only allowed a 500 lift, but nobody's saying about deaeration. So I had the 500 lift, but just that deaeration give you that little more coming out, and that 440 gear, you punch that coming out of turn, boom, it was right now. I mean, you was wound out about 3/4 of the way down the straightaway, because you're backing off then, because them days, you had no power steering and anything, and then getting it. So the trick was, like I say, I would pull, I'd pass more cars coming out of the turn than I ever did down the straightaway. Yeah. If I somebody said, well, how are you getting so much money? I find the gear. So then all of a sudden, other people start doing it, and all of a sudden it started to get a little more competitive again, So.
You're great. What a great memory.
Yeah, I do. I remember a lot of stuff.
Do you remember? Would you do it again?
Yes. That's the only thing I regret that I just didn't have either the money or the facilities to maybe move on because you take guys like Dick Liddens, he worked in the same shop with me, but he had big sponsors. He had Joe Sharkey, and then he picked up Lechner when he had the junkyard here in town. Lechner, and he started going around running late models all around the country, and that's how he got into it. And he didn't do nothing but drive the car. Everybody built it, worked on it for him. In fact, I even went to night school and learned to weld, and so I could weld my roll bars. I went up to night school, and I had a friend that was a welder at GE, and he taught welding part-time up there. And so he come in and he held my hand. I learned to weld. I welded my roll bars. I didn't have a weld bar broke. Might have been a couple of welds that didn't look very neat, but they never broke. Parallel and horizontal, okay, but overhead welding, I had a little trouble. And I welded all the crash bars, so I built my cars from the ground up myself. Like I say, we welded my wheels, converted them to reverse, and we used Buick wheels because at that time the Buick wheel had the widest wheel. So when you take the center out and reverse it, then you had the offset wheel. That's how we got the offset wheel. Well, today now you just go out and buy it. You go out and buy it. I mean, the ingenuity thing was in there. And the big drawback was with your flathead Ford. They had the dual water pumps and the motor mounts. If you had hit something, hit the wall, you were always breaking this cast iron motor mounts. Right. Well, we go down to the junkyard, and you can see you'd buy 5 or 6 down there, and most of these junkyard, give me 50 cents a piece for them. And then I found out this welding guy that taught me how to weld. He could weld cast iron, so then he started welding them up for me. So, but I mean, I think of all those little things, and like double shocking. We put one shock this way, we turn one shock up down, because back then your shock had most. That way or you put two, that way you got more shocking power. One will hold it down, one will hold it up. And like I say, just like to make the steering easier, you extended your pitman arm under there. Mm-hmm. Make it about, instead of being 3 inches, you make it, so then, when you turn, you got more leverage. Right. Of course, it would hit the ground, so what you do, you'd heat it and bend it a little bit so it was up, but that's how you helped on your steering. You didn't want to use a steering knob because,
Yeah, right.
This has been spectacular, Ray. You're amazing.
Somebody came to Kuhl Road one day and was racing, and he finished second or third behind me, and he invited me to a racetrack in, I think it was Sherman, New York. I had won the feature race at Kuhl Road, so he invited me down. It was a racetrack in Sherman, and it was out in a pasture. So me and my buddies told us down on the Sunday we got invited down, and it was built on a hill. The main straightaway was down here, and the back stretch was up on the side of the hill. And you come downhill. So I come in there, all these people were sitting around, and they said, "Oh, J12 was here, the Kuhl Road winner of the Cool Road Speedway last night. Big shot driver, Ray Cool Road victory." So we went out there and run. They made me a fool out of me. I finished last the heat, last in the consolation, and last in the feature because I wasn't geared up for the kind of racetrack. But before I left, the owner of the track came over and said, "Sorry that you're doing better, but here's a $50 bill. I made more money than the guy that won the race."
Because you were a celebrity.
Believe it or not, that's the story I tell people. I come down that hill, I couldn't get that in the turn. And the reason they invited me, because this guy was running second behind me, he kept saying, how good of a race I was, he couldn't get by me. He said, "You had to come down to Sherman and race." But gee, the people kind of sat on the side of the hill. There was cows over in the pit, And I said, "I don't know about this." And I said, "Well, I'll go out and race." So up the hill, down the hill, and I had a heck of a time. But anyhow, before I left, they said, "For your gas money and your time, we'll give me a $50 bill." And I think the guy only made $40 who won the feature or something.
Jeez.
Well, they didn't pay us much, but people got to realize it only cost you maybe like $1 to get into the pits. And what? I will say one thing. I made enough money racing that I didn't, even all 3 or 4 different cards I built at the time, I never took any money out of my household money to race. I always had enough money to pay my pit people. If I needed a part, I needed gas, I needed a tire, I needed this, I had enough money. I had enough money I could pay for my rebuilt engine. I made enough money racing even back then. In fact, I do remember another instance too, this come back when he said, "Well, good man, I remember I won the heat, I won the semi-feature and the feature at Kuhl Road. Now, a lot of people don't know what a semi-feature is. You want me to tell you?
Sure, please.
If you used to run the heats, and the first four places in the heat qualified for the semi-feature and the feature. And fifth back, you didn't qualify. Then, before you got into the semi-feature, they ran what they call consolation races. Maybe you had 3 or 4 races depending. Now, Kuhl Road, I was out there when they had 70 and 80 cars out there.
Wow.
And then the first 4 places in the consolation race, you got to get in the feature. So I won the heat. So I went out and run the semi-feature, won the semi-feature, won the feature. And I walked out of there with $85. Everybody thought I was a wealthy guy.
You probably were.
Yeah.
I mean, what were you making in the shop back then?
That's right. Well, yeah, and it would only cost you, well, I think it was only $1. I think $2 to get in the pits. I think tickets were only $2 or something to get in. And so I paid $50 for the feature. I think it was $50 for the feature. I think it was like 30 or 35 for the semi. And I think 12 or 15 for the heat. So you put together, it was like 35. Yeah, about $50, $55, $58, something like that.
This is fantastic.